Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Love and Lattes. Victoria here, the self-love scientist, and attention, all of my DMV friends or anyone local around the DMV area. I have a special guest for you today, and anyone else who might be curious about it. But I'm so excited to introduce to you Leora Hoffman. Leora is the founder and owner of Love by Leora. And she has been a matchmaker for over 35 years in the DMV, specializing in the 50 plus demographic. Leora is a former practicing attorney and is the author of Catch Me a Catch, Chronicles of a Modern Day Matchmaker. She has been featured in Bethesda Magazine, The Washington Times, The Baltimore Sun, The Washington Jewish Week, and on Montgomery County Cable TV. Leora is an experienced public speaker and has presented to various organizations over her many years in business. Welcome, Leora.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Me too. I'm so excited and so grateful that we were introduced and connected by a mutual friend of ours. Shout out to Kimberly. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you, Kimberly.
So, Leora, for those who are a little new or may not know a lot about the matchmaking world, what is a matchmaker?
A matchmaker is someone who puts two people together who she or he believes are destined to fall in love. It's sort of the best friend who introduces you to someone, but one step removed. And by having that one step removed, it provides an objectivity that friends often lack. So, my mission as a matchmaker is to get people together and to bring love into their lives. Bottom line.
I love that. I'm a huge fan of love. But what inspired you? Like, how did you go from lawmaker or designer, law attorney to love matcher, love maker?
Interesting story. I started out as an attorney, and for 5 years I practiced law and in the area of criminal defense and civil litigation. And after I had my second child, I was home on maternity leave, and I got a call from my sister in New York, which is where I grew up. And she told me that she was thinking of doing something desperate. And I said, "What?" And she said, "I'm thinking of going to a matchmaker." She was then divorced and having trouble finding the right kind of men. And you would think in New York City that there would be no shortage of men, but it's hard everywhere for people to find each other, for quality people to find each other. And so I said to her at that time, "Oh my goodness, you just gave me a brainstorm for my next career." And being a therapist, she said to me, "What kind of crisis are you having with your profession?" And my response was, "Never mind that. I am going to look into this," because at the time, I didn't know of anyone who was doing that kind of work in this area, in the Washington, D.C. area. And so I went to a consultant who helped me develop a business plan. I went back to my then government job as a lawyer and I implemented that plan over the next 9 months or so. And by the end of that period of time, I was so inspired. The feedback was so positive that I thought I am destined to do this kind of work. Not only that, as an experiment, I introduced two people just to see what would happen. And they fell in love in 20 minutes, and they have been married for the last 33 years. And so I took this as a sign from the universe that I was meant to do this work and that I had a gift. And so I decided to follow that path, and that's how I became a matchmaker.
That's so beautiful. You're like, that's it.
That's it, absolutely. And I really have had such a rewarding journey doing this work and bringing people together. And so I really am very, very proud of the couples I've gotten together because it's really life altering when you find that right one.
What do you think about, because you made a really good comment earlier about how it is difficult for people to find, like in quotes, like find each other. And I see it, across social media, and then you just hear it, go to your local coffee shop or stand in the metro and you'll hear someone talking about, which one, or there's not enough good men in the world, etc. And we're in this like very fast paced, very, easy shortcut society. That includes, using the dating apps, or like you said, friends setting up with friends. So what are your thoughts on using dating apps compared to a matchmaker?
I don't believe that there's any substitute for the personal touch. And that's what I really put into my work is my instincts, my experience, and my desire to really get to know someone well enough that I can zero in on the right person for them. The apps are, instant gratification. And that's fine. It works for a lot of people. And sometimes people just want to have fun. And there's nothing wrong with that. My goal, because I deal with a population of people who are interested in a committed relationship, is really to find that right person. They don't come to me for volume. They really come to me for my expertise to recommend the person whom they should meet. And it is a process. With the apps and with online dating, you don't necessarily know who's behind those profiles. You go by a picture and you go by what people describe themselves as, but you don't know if it's true, number one, and you don't really know enough to, be that discerning.
I like that you mentioned adding a personal touch. I feel like that creates a lot of like you're more in the work, and then your clients have the ability to like trust that process because they're like, you know who I am. I'll give you this information and let you apply that.
Exactly. And because I know who I'm working with and who I'm introducing to whom, there's always a reason why I make a recommendation that two people meet. Something inspires me to think that it's worth a shot. And I always like to err on the side of what have you got to lose? Because I deal with attractive and interesting people. They have a lot going for them. And worst case scenario, people meet and make a friend. I always believe that it's worth an investment of time and effort to try because you don't know until you get out there and you're face to face with the person. You really cannot tell through a photo or even through my description. I can make a recommendation, but two people have to be there and they have to make the magic happen.
Yes, they do. What are some of the qualities or descriptions that you share with your clients?
Essentially, a bio about them. I provide photos and accurate photos, meaning that they're recent. I always require that people give me photos within the last year because you hear a lot about people posting old photos or really ones that don't depict them accurately. I provide photos, a little bit about their situation, where they live, what they do, where they're from, what their religious beliefs are, what their political beliefs are, something about their personalities, whether they have pets, because you'd be surprised how relevant that can be or how significant that can be for some people, and why I am making the referral. It's almost analogous to a realtor who will show a property and say, these are the features of the property. And you may have requested a colonial, but I think you should, look at this Victorian home because there's so much charm there that you didn't necessarily anticipate. And it's the same with introductions. People tell me I'm looking for A, B, C, and D. And sometimes I will have the inspiration to say, well, that's fine. And here's somebody who possesses all that, but might be a little bit of a different type from what you're used to. And because I know the person on the other side of the equation, I have reason to believe that they might be compatible.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's like an experiment, but it must be so fulfilling.
Absolutely. I look at it as almost drawing a composite sketch of people's likes and dislikes and their preferences. People will go out on date number one and they'll give me feedback. If it clicked, wonderful. Then they will continue to see that person. If it didn't, I get the feedback and I'm in a position to coach people and to give them the feedback that they normally would not be receiving. Because if a woman doesn't get a call back from someone she liked, she doesn't know why. She just has to guess, well, maybe there was someone else, maybe it was something I said, maybe they didn't like the way I looked. You never really know. But with my process, I give people that feedback. And that is so valuable because it gives them an opportunity to see how other people perceive them and maybe to make some modifications that might be helpful. And, that itself is worth the price of admission.
Yeah. I love that you provide them the feedback because I can think of a couple people and probably folks who are listening who have probably had their fair share of dates who, as they call it nowadays, it's being ghosted. They have a wonderful time. It seems like there's a connection, and then there's just nothing after.
Right. Well, I find out, even if people are not interested, I find out why. Most of the time, it's that they just didn't feel the chemistry. And that's fair. But sometimes there are specific things. For example, I just had a situation where the gentleman reported back that the woman talked nonstop about her ex. And that's something that she really wasn't aware of. So I was in a position to really advise her that for the next situation, they both agreed that it didn't really click between them, but they had a very nice evening. So her having that feedback is going to help her up her game for hopefully the next referral where she might really be interested in that person and she'll know to avoid doing that.
And then for the clients that you're helping right now, what would you say is there, why would they be seeking out a matchmaker? Is it that they tried the dating apps? Are they just, what do you hear most often from people?
Most of the time, my clients are people who are very busy professionals. They may have or may not have tried the apps. Some have and got really burned out doing it, and others don't want to do it. They are very busy, they are very picky, and they really would like someone else to do the vetting for them so they can have qualified leads. And they also want to develop a working relationship with a trusted confidant, a coach, an advocate. And because of my legal background, I really see myself as an advocate for my clients because I want to accomplish the mission of finding them love. It's not about just giving them a date, it's about finding that right person for them. And sometimes it happens right away, but most of the time it's a gradual process where people grow on each other, they learn about each other. The spark can happen right away or it can happen slowly. And sometimes a realization develops like, wow, I really value this person. I admire this person. And oh, all of a sudden the attraction kicks in.
I love that. I've learned to notice that love can be a very savory process.
Absolutely. I like to recommend that people keep it on simmer for a while because it's more exciting and fun that way.
Yeah.
If intimacy happens right away, then there's really, I mean, it's always great if it works between two people,
Mhm.
but it's even more special when people kind of work up to it and really anticipate and, as you said, savor the process.
What's one of your favorite matchmaking stories?
Oh my gosh, I have so many. They are memorialized in the book that I wrote, Catch Me a Catch, Chronicles of a Modern Day Matchmaker. One of my favorites was a 36-year-old woman who had moved down to this area and was looking to get married and have a family. And I introduced her to a gentleman who had just ended a relationship with a woman who was divorced with 4 children. And they had a beautiful 2-year relationship during which time he decided that he really wanted children of his own. And so they parted amicably, and she actually recommended me to him. And so I introduced them, and he right away liked her and could see why I introduced them. And she liked him potentially as a friend, but she told me that she just did not feel the attraction. And so I encouraged her to spend some more time with him to see. I said, if you can identify the fact that he is so special, then see what there is. The worst case, as I said before, you'll develop a friendship. Well, I didn't hear from her for a little while, and then all of a sudden she called me and said, Leora, we're inseparable. And I was so delighted and surprised. And I said, well, can you explain? And she said, well, the truth is that when I met him, I didn't feel so great about myself because I wanted to lose some weight. And so I went on a diet and I lost 10 pounds. And all of a sudden, he looked better to me. And I thought that was so interesting because she didn't feel that she was at the top of her game. And therefore, she couldn't allow herself to feel the attraction towards him. But once she felt good in her own body and in her own skin, all of a sudden, she was able to even consider an intimate relationship with him. And the sparks flew from that point. And they did marry and had 2 daughters. And that was one of the beginning stories of my business. Those daughters have now started college. So that was a lesson to me.
Oh, wow. I love that. It sounds like this client of yours, like, had to create some confidence within herself. And then she was like, oh, okay. He's meeting.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh.
Exactly. But they were a really compatible couple, the same values, the
Mhm.
same goals. And so it's been a very successful marriage.
So you said a very interesting word, compatible. Do you think there's a difference between compatibility and chemistry?
They are not mutually exclusive at all. Yes, there's a difference. I mean, you can be compatible as friends, but not have the chemistry, and it really never turn into anything but a friendship. Or you can have the chemistry and discover that you're really not compatible as a couple. And those are the really difficult situations where people are really hot for each other, but when they try and make it work, it never does because they really are not right for each other as a couple.
And when you say that, like, are you speaking on terms of like maybe sharing the same values around like marriage, children, work, life, balance, stuff like that?
Yes. Yes, sometimes, or sometimes it's just they have different styles.
Mm.
One is a night person, one is a morning person. One likes to party, the other one doesn't. One is a Democrat, the other is a Republican. There are all kinds of differences that can crop up between people, but I have known couples that because they had strong chemistry and some of the same values, they were able to make something work. Whereas if they are perfect on paper, sometimes without that spark, it just doesn't go anywhere. So I think to have a successful relationship, you need both the compatibility factor and the chemistry.
I agree. I think chemistry is something, like you said, it may not be initial, but there's still like, it's like when you strike a match, like it's there, right?
Right. And that's really the glue that holds people together because relationships have their ups and downs. And if you can count on at least that part of the relationship being nurturing, then it helps to overcome the differences and the times when you might not be going through, the best time in the relationship.
Have you had clients reach out after they've basically met their match and just like share updates with like life stories and whatnot?
Oh, absolutely. There are many people I've kept in touch with over the years, and I have become personal friends with many of my former clients, some of whom I did not find them Mr. or Ms. Right, but they knew that I worked really hard for them, and for one reason or another, it didn't click. And I have several friends I've been for decades have had a strong friendship with. And one in particular, I later helped her put an online profile, and eventually she met someone or somebody else who met somebody through a friend, but I coached them as a couple based on my knowledge of him as a client and helped them get to the finish line and help them through some very thorny legal issues that with my legal background, I was able to really help facilitate that.
Oh wow. Is there a real timetable for people to meet their match, or do you think everybody's got different, like it's different for everybody?
I really think it's different for everyone. I mean, some people are in a big hurry because they find it difficult to be on their own. And that's always a red flag for me. When it's an emergency where they must have somebody, that tells me that they may not really be fully realized within themselves enough to be in a healthy relationship. I think when people are emotionally balanced and healthy, of course, having that right person to share a good life with is the icing on the cake, and that's wonderful. And who wouldn't want that? But some people are not necessarily ready for that.
Do you think there's a difference, or have you noticed a difference between what men are looking for versus women when they come asking for help?
Really, bottom line, no. I think that men's and women's needs are the same, but they may go about it somewhat differently. And people tend to stereotype, like all men, all they want is sex, or, the women are gold diggers, or, we've heard those kinds of stereotypes. But in my experience, they're really not true. I believe that everybody has had a journey, and you don't really understand what that person has been through until you really pay attention and learn about what their particular path has been. And so everybody wants to be loved, but I have learned that in order to make the men happy, I need to find them the physical type of woman that they're looking for because there's not a lot of wiggle room with that. With women, of course, they want to be attracted just as the men want to, but I have found that women tend to be a little more flexible in what they're looking for, so that if they are not immediately attracted to a man, but get to know him and really love being with him, and he makes them laugh, over time, that attraction can develop. Whereas for a man, if he's not attracted, game over. So as a matchmaker, I make sure to present the kind of woman to my male clients that they are attracted to. And for the women, I also try and do that, but I also notice that they are more forgiving of physical qualities that may not meet their immediate criteria.
Very interesting. It's great to hear that at the end of the day, again, everyone's looking for love. And at the same time, I have heard the theory that, for most women, of course, they do want to create that strong attraction, but then they also have like that like nurturing feeling that they want towards their partner. And then with men, they want to be attracted, and then also they're looking for that emotional connection, aka like that little bit of chemistry in the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. It's easier, for a man to open the door to a romance when he's captivated by the woman's looks right from the get-go. And, women want that connection, and then they will become more captivated by the person. Sometimes it happens simultaneously, and sometimes it doesn't.
That's exciting. How many are you, if you want to share, but how many clients do you generally help with? Is this like a very gradual process? Or do you only open yourself up to a few like at a time?
Yes, I offer annual contracts.
Mm.
So when I work with somebody, it's for a year at a time, and it's an intense relationship. And so there's only so many people I will, take on at any given time because I want to do each search justice. So at any given time, I will probably, depending on what level of membership, I can deal with between 10 and 30 people at a time. And I have a pool of somewhere between now 5 and 600 people. So it's a small and intimate network. It's not a corporate, you know, kind of database with thousands of people. It's really, as I said, for the kind of person who wants a one-on-one relationship with a matchmaker where I've met and vetted everyone myself. No one else is the matchmaker, although I do have people who work for me as scouts or networkers who send me referrals. But I've kept my practice small because I want to be personally involved with people from the very first phone call to the feedback after the dates, and hopefully to the point at which they say, put my membership on hold. I want to focus on getting to know this person, and they want to date exclusively.
Such a beautiful word, exclusive. Who would have thought that would become such a key term that we have to use in now we're at 2025, that is something we have to bring up in relationships.
Oh, absolutely. That's a very important concept because if people make assumptions about what's happening between them without talking about whether they're exclusive, if they want to become exclusive, and have that security that they are in an exclusive relationship, a lot of miscommunication can happen, and a lot of heartbreak can happen.
Absolutely, I agree. I think having your intentions behind that are important, especially when it comes to putting yourself out there and communicating with your partner or the person you are dating. It can save you so much emotional stress.
Oh, absolutely.
What would you say, who are your ideal clients?
My ideal clients are, as I said, successful professionals
Mhm.
who are very selective about who they want to meet, who are looking for the right person for them, not to meet a person a week, for example, because they wouldn't even have the time to date a new person a week. But they want to invest in a future with somebody. And therefore, they're investing in working with a specialist like myself to really find them screened and vetted candidates who really meet their criteria. They have a lot to offer. They're attractive, fun, interesting, exciting people. And really, they have very wonderful and full lives, except that they want to share it with that right person.
I really like that the way you said that. I think having someone involved, especially again, like you mentioned, being a high performing professional and just knowing like I'm ready to date, but again, it's that I don't have the time and you can see it and folks can see it on social media where it's like how can I meet my dream partner if I'm sitting in my home all day or going to the office, going to the gym, eating and just trying to get by. So I think it's wonderful that you have the ability to kind of um take on these like in a sense quote cases for people.
Yes, and not only that, I also serve people who have retired from very high level careers and they have been very successful, but now they're in a different stage of life and they want to meet an equally successful person who themselves has had a very, very interesting life so that they can really, in retirement, decide how they want to invest. Usually it's in travel, time with family, consulting part-time perhaps. People really build the kind of lives they want in retirement based on what occurred prior. And most of the people who I work with who are retired had very, very interesting careers. And they themselves, as I said, have a lot of life left to offer somebody, and they want to make the most of it.
Mm. I think that's so beautiful though. Like it's such a good feeling to know that there are people, like legit people out there who are like, I am looking for my person, you know? What do you think might turn people away from working with a matchmaker?
I think the stereotype of a matchmaker, the word itself conjures up, Yenta from Fiddler on the Roof, someone who would force somebody into a relationship against their will. It's something that culturally, especially the men, I think, have a little bit of an issue with. I am really, I would like to say, the modern version of someone who really has people's interests at heart. In fact, when I do a search for someone, much like a search firm, I really should call myself a heart hunter as opposed to a headhunter because that's my mission. I think the idea of a matchmaker and somebody, kind of intervening can be a little off-putting to people, but once they realize the benefit of having somebody be a go-between and really taking the pressure off of them in that way, then they realize the benefits that really come from working with somebody who can listen to the feedback, can function as a diplomat in a way that gets people to think about each other in a slightly more positive and constructive way. And I know I have couples who are married today where had I not occupied that role for them, they never would have gotten to the finish line. And I'm very proud of that.
That's amazing. That must feel so good.
It does. It does.
And like I think especially nowadays, and also you are very aware of this, but DMV DC area itself is a very high performing, fast paced environment. Like if you're not catching up, you're way behind or tripping on the asphalt, right? So
Right. And that's a lot of stress for people. So it really helps to have somebody really take the heavy lifting of searching off their shoulders to really provide them with a little bit of a safety net, especially for women who know that the person they're going to meet is safe, is who they say they are, has a lot to offer them, and who's going to show up when they say they're going to show up. That I make sure of that.
this has been so wonderful, Leora. I like everything you're saying. I'm in complete awe and it's so refreshing. Just hearing coming from the side of like just you hear it all, like you can hear it all the time. People are just so unhappy with the quote dating scene when I don't believe they have yet recognized that there are people such as yourself out there who could really create genuine connections that could help like build the bridge towards what they really want. And I think that's very special.
Thank you. I consider myself a specialist, just as though you would hire an accountant to do your taxes, a realtor to buy or sell a property. I consider myself a relationship specialist, and I believe in specialists. So that is something that has been my joy to cultivate and has been my honor to exercise with my clients because I feel passionately towards that. And it is one of the most rewarding things that a person could be doing is to really fulfill their passion and make a living doing it.
It's been so rewarding to have you on the podcast. And I'm very happy to share with everybody that I will have Leora's contact information, her website, and links to her book and any other resources in the show notes today. Leora, thank you so much for spending time with me on Love and Lattes and telling us how, how people can meet their match, especially for high performing professionals.
It's been my absolute pleasure to be here with you, Victoria, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to another episode of Love and Lattes. We'll see you in the next episode.